A vote for Labour means we would rejoin the European Union.
This is Sadiq Khan, being interviewed by a reporter from La Repubblica, which is an Italian left-wing newspaper.
I went to an event with Alexander Stubb, the Finnish president, the other day, and he said Brexit was the worst mistake I ever seen. You chopped your arm without a reason. What should be the path for you? Do you think that maybe the UK should rejoin the EU at some point?
Well, I'm quite clear. I see on a daily basis the damage Brexit has done to not just London but Londoners, the damage economically, socially and culturally.
Culturally, how does leaving the European Union affect people in this country culturally? I mean, what is the European Union? It's a political entity with a flag, but no identity, no history. It is an empty vessel that has no culture to speak of.
And I'm quite clear in terms of what needs to happen, which is I do think we should join the European Union. But let me explain why. We've published today some research, the latest research, this time done by the National Institute for Economic and Social Research and also Goldman Sachs. And what that confirms is that our economy would have grown by an additional 10% but for Brexit.
These organisations, how do they know that the economy would have grown by 10% during this time, this period? It's like people that had the shots and then got COVID and then said, oh, well, it would have been much worse if I hadn't have had the shot. Well, how do you know? You don't know. That's a hypothetical situation you're talking about, and it's the same with this. You know, these Remainers used to say, these groups that are anti-Brexit, that want us back in the European Union, have been saying that the economy would have grown by 5%, 6%, 8%. Now they've raised it. Now Sadiq Khan is talking about a new study that claims that our economy would be growing by 10%. They absolutely can't know that. And he doesn't mention the pandemic. He doesn't mention COVID-19, which happened to pretty much coincide with Brexit. I mean, we left the European Union in January 2020, and 7 or 8 weeks later, we had the first lockdown. And the government of that time trashed our economy, created the cost of lockdown crisis that is still felt today with energy bills, etc. And he doesn't mention that fact. So is it down to Brexit that we're flatlining? And why is it that other European countries are also flatlining? Countries that are inside the European Union, if it's all down to Brexit.
So park for a second the social and cultural damage. The economic damage is humongous. So I think there should be a 5-stage process, a 5-pronged process in relation to this. Number 1, we should reset relations with the EU. That's done. Tick. Number 2, we should have closer alignment, and the Chancellor this week has talked about closer alignment sector by sector and only diverge on exceptional circumstances. So we'll basically tick. The next 3 steps, though, are incredibly important. Step 3, we should rejoin the customs union, this Parliament. Step 4...
You mean the EU customs union?
Absolutely.
Not a bespoke customs union?
Look, let me be quite clear. Any trade agreement is less good than the customs union. And then step 4, we should rejoin the single markets. The single market and customs union, we should try and do this Parliament. And then we should, as a Labour Party, fight the next general election with a clear manifesto commitment. A vote for Labour means we would rejoin the European Union.
Well, you can't fault him for his honesty there. He's basically saying that Labour should undo the result of the referendum without any further consultation with the British people. Just rejoin the customs union and the single market in this parliament, which wasn't in Labour's manifesto. And then at the next election, give the electorate the choice on whether to rejoin the European Union fully in the next parliament. Well, if we join the customs union and the single market in this parliament, we're pretty much already tied into the European Union as it is. So membership really is just rubber stamping what damage you've already done.
I think it's inevitable. Why do I say that? Because we've seen the damage it's done, but also we've seen the promises made by the Brexiteers are being exposed. There is no additional £350 million every week going to the NHS. Families are suffering, businesses are suffering, our country is suffering.
This is quite extraordinary. So do you think that the Labour Party should commit for the next election to rejoin the EU, also without a second referendum?
So let me be quite clear in relation to why I've reached my conclusion. When the Labour Party fought the last general election, I understand the policy the Labour Party had in advance of the general election. Since Labour was elected, we've had the election of President Trump. President Trump is imposing tariffs to friend and foe.
Well, surprise, surprise, he somehow manages to get President Trump into the equation. But if he wants to talk about tariffs, well, let's talk about tariffs. Because he's obviously talking about rejoining the European Union. Now, when President Trump first introduced his tariffs last year, we had preferential treatment. We had the 10% baseline tariff that most countries and organisations like the EU didn't get. The EU had a 15% base rate. So we're already better off outside of the European Union. The European Union had 50% tariffs on steel and aluminium. UK negotiated a 25% tariff on aluminium. So we're actually better off outside the European Union when it comes to Trump's tariffs.
Created a huge economic uncertainty. That was unforeseen at the last general election. Number two, America is involved with Israel in a war in Iran, causing huge additional economic uncertainty, affecting the price of oil, affecting the cost of living. God knows what President Trump's exit strategy, what the end game is.
While he makes a valid point about the war on Iran affecting the economy, driving up bills and inflation, what has that got to do with whether or not we're a member of the European Union? You know, on mainland Europe, inflation is going up. Energy bills are going up. Cost of living is going up. Whether we are a member of the European Union or not will not shield us from the damage that's been done by the war in Iran.
So the facts have changed, the evidence has changed, which is why this Parliament, we should rejoin the customs union and single market. I'm quite clear. On the ballot paper at the next general election is a vote for Labour, a vote to rejoin the European Union. And we should be unequivocal about the benefits of the European Union, because we've now seen the alternative. We've now seen what happens when you're outside the European Union. Less investment in the UK, less exports to the European Union. But let me speak from experience. You know, since 2019, it breaks my heart. I've seen Londoners, and they're Londoners, by the way, who are EU nationals leaving London.
They are Londoners, but in the same breath, they're EU nationals, right? How can they be Londoners if they're EU nationals? And presumably, they've been in London maybe since 2004 when the EU expanded. Don't know, maybe less time than that, maybe a bit more time. How can they be Londoners? And he's very specific.
And they're Londoners, by the way.
These are Londoners, he says, right? So where are they going? They are going to mainland Europe, to Poland, Germany, Romania, wherever it may be. They are going home, right? Because home is always where you're from. They're not from London. They're from elsewhere.
We had in 2019 more than 840,000 EU Londoners working in London. That's gone down to now 700,000. That means 140 Londoners have left London. And the two biggest sectors they've left, construction and hospitality. And these are, Romanians, Polish, Italian, French, Irish Londoners who've left. They've left their friends, they've left their neighbours.
And there we go. We've established that they're actually Romanian, French, Irish. They're not actually Londoners. This goes back to his globalist mindset. This is less to do with Brexit and more about trashing our cultural identity and national identity. So if anyone can become a Londoner, if anyone, no matter how they get to London, no matter how they set foot in London, wherever they're from around the world, if anyone can be a Londoner, then being a Londoner is absolutely meaningless. If someone from the other side of the world has set foot in London and in Sadiq Khan's mind is now a Londoner, as much as some old dude that was brought up in the East End in the 1930s has lived there all his life, that's absurd. And you extrapolate this to the United Kingdom. Anyone can be British. Anyone can be British. Just got a passport. Everyone's British. It doesn't matter. Everyone's British. Just come here, get leave to remain. You're just as British as anyone. Yeah. And now they're trying to do it with the native people. The English, Scots, and Welsh. They're trying to say that anyone can be a Scot. Anyone can be English. Right? Now, these groups are the native peoples, right? They are distinct West European ethnic groups that are native to the island of Great Britain, right? So if you're saying that, anyone can be English, anyone can be Welsh, like Ruda Cabana, then what you're doing is you're stripping away what it means to be English or Welsh or British, whatever, or a Londoner. You're taking away their culture, you're taking away their ethnicity, you're taking away their history. And if you take all those things away, if you remove all those things away, it becomes so much easier for the globalist institutions that Sadiq Khan is a part of to swallow up nations. Because if your people have none of those things, no history, no culture, no identity, then there's no need for any nations. There's no need for any borders. And that's what Sadiq Khan wants. He wants a world which can be swallowed up by this globalist agenda. And the easiest way to do that, the easiest way to pacify people is to strip away their identity.
I think it's inevitable, the direction of travel. At some stage, we're going to rejoin the European Union. Why have additional pain? In the meantime, why not delay the inevitable? Why have all these years of challenges because we're outside the European Union?
Why have all these years of challenges? Why? We had a referendum to take us into what was the European Economic Community that grew into this centralised anti-democratic monstrosity called the European Union, and we had a referendum to take us out of that. Well, you don't want a referendum to take us back into it, right? You just want to take us back into it without any consultation with the British people. So democratic. Just like the European Union.
We can't rely upon the United States, but also rejoining the customs union and single market is better for us than every other trade deal put together.
But you also know, I mean, you talk about EU friends, wanting us back, but you also know that the EU is a very demanding body. There have been frictions during the reset process between the UK and the EU. So do you think that the EU will really accept Britain back?
Look, we're all takers. We're all takers. We're taking the rules made by the European Union. But how is it logical or rational for us to get benefits of the European Union when we're outside the European Union? It's like you being a member of a tennis club, paying your dues, and then somebody else comes along and uses the court whenever they like, and they're not a member. That's not fair. And so don't be surprised if those that run the tennis club ask for additional fees. Why pay additional fees? Why not be part of the club? And so it's clear from all the evidence that close alignment is inevitable. It's clear from all the evidence the damage Brexit is causing us economically, the damage to families, the damage to businesses, the damage to our economy, the damage to growth. And so why delay this conversation? Why not have it as soon as you possibly can? I'll make two other points, which is look at growth in December, 0.1%. Growth in January, 0%. The best way to turbocharge growth is to rejoin this fantastic union.
We're already in a fantastic union, Mr. Mayor. It's called the United Kingdom. And as for that other union you keep banging on about, well, we had a little bit of a say on that 10 years ago, and 52% of British people, when asked, said, a little bit like they'll say to Labour at the next general election,